No worries. Perfect.
So we're joined all the way from across the Atlantic in the lovely city of London by my friend Nana Agyapong, co-founder of Investate and multiple entrepreneur over there in the United Kingdom. We thank you so much for taking some time for us here today. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. This is our entrepreneurship class. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for fitting us in your busy schedule.
Thank you so much for having me as well. It's honestly, it's an honor.
Yeah, and you have such a cool story. And I was telling the kids before we went to lunch, you're not much older. It wasn't that long ago. You were in secondary school,
Yeah.
just a few years ago. And I love how you said in one of your interviews, I just thought after year 12 I would be a bum.
Yep.
And you have gone on to found multiple companies because you wanted to do your own thing. So take us through that journey of deciding you weren't going to be a bum and all these
Yeah.
businesses you started and kind of the mindset you've had in starting these.
Yeah. So, as you said, I did not want to be a bum, but in year 12, I'm not sure. I think that maybe that's grade 11. I'm not sure if that's a grade, but
Yep.
that's when, sixth form A levels, you have something called A levels, where it's like excessive exams and you focus on just primarily three main topics. And so I was like, you know what, I actually don't care. So much happened in my life. People were passing, my life, I felt like my life was crumbling. So I was like, you know what? I'm content with failing my A levels. That's completely fine with me. I don't mind or I don't really care. And I just kind of told them, my teacher straight up, I'm so content with failing, guys. I'm fine with failing. That's completely fine with me. But cool. And it must have hit me. I was watching this one video of this guy who he was fully crying. He was crying and he just came out of prison. And he was speaking about how he wished he could change his life sooner instead of trying to be too nonchalant. Because everybody wants to be nonchalant these days. Instead of being
Oh
that,
man.
100%. He said, you know what? I wish I changed my life sooner. Because in the UK, once you have a criminal record, you can't do much of your life. So it was quite unfortunate. And then even just me thinking about, you know, the successes my parents have, traveling from, Ghana to the UK, being immigrant parents and then having children here, even though they came to this country at very young ages, they still built themselves something in a society that wasn't built for them. And so I was like, you know what? There's no way on God's earth my parents will bring me to this country, built, many businesses for themselves and built themselves up and a very good family, educated me, tutored me, a lot of things. I was quite a lucky girl. A middle class family, they paid for a lot of things. For me to just get up and say, you know what, I'm gonna be a bum, I'm not gonna do anything. So cool. When I had that pivotal moment, I started educating myself. Yeah, I took random courses during A levels. I took a course on UCAS. UCAS is what we use to apply for universities in the UK, and that's a
Yep.
system. So there's a certain thing called a personal statement. I learned how to just craft personal statements through getting UCAS qualified and all of these things. Not qualified, but I learned the courses through someone who was from UCAS. And then I started teaching it to people. And then there's something called degree apprenticeships, which I really think would be ideal in America as well, where you can get a
Yep.
degree while working in a corporate firm or just a firm.
Yep.
No uni fees, no nothing. I was like, okay, cool, this sounds lit. I'm not trying to go uni. Money has to be made. Cool. So I started educating myself in it, and I realized no one speaks about what apprenticeships are. Everyone just says, my life is amazing. I'm making X amount of money at 18, but how do you get there? There's a whole, not, I want to say gatekeeping, but there's a whole glamorization and over glamorization of that. So as me, someone with ADHD, I hyper fixated on that. And I said, you know what, let me find out what it is. So found myself at different places, different networking events, and I thoroughly studied. And then I met my co-founder, who was also someone that's striving to get a degree apprenticeship. Then we both got our offers back in October, which is really, really early, October 2024. So we said, you know what, we fought and we absolutely battled to get here. So you know what, let's actually get up and just, teach other people to do it completely free, because there's people charging £300 just to get into a course. No one should ever have to pay an extortionate amount like that. And that's how Investate was formed, investing in your state of mind, because that's the most important thing. And your mind is the biggest asset that you have.
Man, what a great statement. And the thing about Investate, what I've been able to read about it, is you guys are a nonprofit, but
Yeah.
you've created opportunity for people because the UK it's had similar issues as the United States when it comes
Mm,
to young black kids been able to break into industries that did not have representation.
yeah.
And you have found a way to not only teach that, but teach them skills like the things I talk about in here, learning how to speak, learning how to
Mm,
sell, learning how to market yourself. So talk about not only how you teach that, but why those are so important in no matter what type of business you go
mm.
into.
100%. It's so important because as a black woman and a young black woman, and just being, a minority in general, going into some of these spaces, you already feel as if you're not meant to be there because it's uncommon for us to have relatives in these type of spaces. And, we all have different dialects, we all have different tongues. I know for London, there's something called multicultural London English, MLE, and that's the native tongue of London where we all speak. It's like, oh, man said this, man said that, like that type of slang. It was formulated from patois, formulated from different like Punjabi patois, Nigerian, like I beg this, I beg that. All of it is formulated to one, just all minorities came and just went bam, English is going to be jeopardized according to society, right? And so, as it is, you need to be able to, how can I say, there's a certain culture that comes into these worlds when you go into the corporate world, when you go into the working space, and unfortunately, I just have to say it bluntly and I have to say it straight up. When you come at speaking in a certain tone, in a certain dialect, people are going to perceive you differently just because of preconceived notions. They're going to look at you and think, okay, well, I don't feel as if you're well spoken because you don't articulate yourself properly. Because even if you were to know big words, you can still, the impression you give to people isn't good enough. The first 3 seconds that you spend with a person or speak is the impression that you give off to people. And so, if you're speaking differently or in a certain way, it is so, important to bear in mind. And also, there's a thing called code switching as well. I could start speaking like this, you get what I mean? And then out of nowhere, I'm articulating myself extremely perfectly because I'm extremely aware of my surroundings. And on top of that, I'm also extremely aware of the fact that, you know, in different places, as unfortunate as it is, you have to adjust. If you're going to meet the president, I'm not going to bring any political views here, but if you were to meet a president that you really liked, you're not going to go up there, dap him up, give him a handshake and all of that. You're going to be respectful about it, right? Same thing as, if you're going to meet your boss. When you're going to speak to your boss, you're not going to speak to your boss with, I don't really want to call it slang, should I say? Or the wrong articulation. You're going to speak to your boss respectfully because there's a level of respect and there's a level of authority, and you know the situation and space that you're in. And there also is a misconception that it's only white people or it's white English. It's not white English because I have many, white colleagues and colleagues that aren't minority background that also code switch. It's just more about maintaining, that, I wouldn't say authority, but that professionality within office. You have to speak as if you're typing an email at times, and that's completely okay and that's completely fine because when it comes to work, you're working with big clients, and the impression you put on is what sells. The impression you put on is literally what sells, and that's important. The way you speak is important to each and every aspect in terms of selling your product. And when it even comes to product selling, you have to make sure that you understand your product more than anybody else knows as well. So you are able to, speak about that product, sell that product. Because sometimes it's just your voice that sells. Honestly, with Investate, is honestly, my co-founder and I that sold it out, to be fair, that got people to come in because we were able to just voice it out because we knew exactly what we're doing. We knew our purpose, we knew who we were, and we knew what we were impacting. We knew our
Absolutely.
market, we knew our mission, and we knew our crowd. Exactly.
Man, and you talked about right there a lot of the things that we've talked about in their own business concepts is if you have a mission that is well known, it is easy to have that culture throughout in your entire company.
Yeah.
And if you know who you're selling to, it makes it easier to market it. Now,
Mm,
obviously, you're not going to turn down anybody's money, but
100%.
when you know who to market to as a target market, it is a lot easier to come up with your marketing material. Now, I know Investate is your baby, and you're extremely proud of it, and you should be. But talk about
Yeah.
some of the other business ventures you have, because you don't just have Investate; you have multiple businesses, which for somebody in their 20s is amazing in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. So I'm actually 18, by the way. So
Wow.
for the other businesses that I have a consulting business. Yeah. And so I help people just understand their business niches, also marketing. So it's like a marketing consultancy, help people dissect and break down, how to market yourself. Because these days you can have an absolute bum product, but because your marketing is top tier, people are going to buy it. It's like food. When you go to some of these Michelin star restaurants, they look absolutely delicious. You're like, yeah, I can't wait to tuck in. You eat it, you're like, oh, this don't taste what I expected. Same thing for marketing, same thing for businesses. Make sure everything is top notch. The way you look to outside is so important because everything is social. We're in a bubble where we're all connected through, electronics all over the place. And so, I help people with consultancy, helping get to know how to work on their marketing, how to work on their business as well. I also have an online digital products business where I sell just guides on building up your business and building up your personal branding as well. And then I also have a property business where I do property. And I also do free courses at times to help people get into Airbnbs, rent to rent, and also private sector leasing, which is essentially social housing and helping people who are in need of housing get into different houses as well. And then there's one business that I'm starting very much soon, and it is it's going to sound a bit crazy, guys. I'm sorry, but it is through Roblox, and it is creating a social networking lounge through Roblox. Now, the reason why we are starting this
Wow.
is mainly because of the fact, yeah, we are aware that so many young people are on games these days, and these games don't really benefit them in a way that they should. And so we're like, let's take
Wow.
advantage of that. You can have voice chat on Roblox, you can talk to all of these people, but on top of that, you're able to network with them, socialize with them, and actually, learn some important employability skills there. And then there's actually a final business that I forgot to mention, and that is a marketing agency where we help influencers and companies find influencers, and then we get a commission off that. So we help them find people that can promote them. So I'm very much a marketing girl essentially.
Well, I know you're kind of joking about that and you're humble, which is amazing, but having marketing skills is just as important as having the financial skills. And a
100%.
big thing, and you talk about the games not being positive, a big thing of mine, and I know they get so sick of me talking about it, is being able to communicate. Because you can have
Mm,
the best idea in the world, you could be the most
yeah.
talented person in the world, but if you can't market it to the correct people and be confident in the way you sell it, all of your work's been for nothing.
Exactly. That's so true. It's so important just to make sure you know yourself, you know how you speak, and you know the crowd you're talking to. Because one thing I've noticed is that it's okay to code switch with who you're speaking to. People forget that a lot of the time. That's as in, let's say you're speaking to young people or people your age. You're not going to come across to them and you're going to speak too robotic or something like that. You're going to speak to them in the same kind of tone as their mate, but then with also a kind of sturdy, stern tone. And that's another important thing when it comes to communicating, being able to read the room. And I'm sure you can agree with me, Greg. It's so important to understand that your communication is one of the biggest assets you can have. And just in that, bubble of assets is skills. Having skills such as communication, articulation, and also just beating that whole, anxiety part of speaking in general is such a big asset. Because at the end of the day, God forbid your business crumbles down, at least you're able to come and articulate that. You're able to. Apologies, mom was asking where our charger was. But it's so important, all of these assets, God forbid your business crumbles down. But if that's the case, at least you still have those assets there. You may not have the finances, but you have those skills to rebuild and to be greater again. Being a bad communicator, you're essentially being, a bad business person because these days communication, you have to communicate to your audience. Before social media was here, you didn't really need to have that much of a interaction with your target audience. But nowadays it's so important. If you can't communicate your product, if you can't communicate your benefits, if you can't communicate who you are and what you're doing, there's no point of even trying to start up something for yourself because you don't have a message, you don't have, a direct story, and people can't follow along because they're going to get bored or they're not going to take you as seriously either.
Yeah. Now, before I get to their questions, one thing I did want to mention, and you've kind of talked about this a little bit, is social media obviously isn't going anywhere, and it can be a great marketing tool. But the problem is people see things on TikTok and on Instagram of the glamorized side of entrepreneurship, but what they don't see is the planning side. And
Mm,
we have all these raps and songs about it, about I'm going to move and be rich because I open my own business. But it's not just a magic trick. It really
yeah.
is something that requires 100% of your time, 100% of your energy, and 100% of your focus. So, what
Yeah.
are some things that mean, because like we said, you're the same age as a lot of our kids, and you're seeing people already kind of overlook the planning stage of it. So, what
Mm.
type of things are people not preparing for when they want to go into business for themselves?
I think what they're not preparing for is a long-term goal. I believe thoroughly that a majority of the reasons why young people start businesses is for the sake of getting quick money. They just get up and think, you know what, I like the idea of making money for myself. I like being independent. I like being my own boss. You don't like that, trust me. It takes a lot to like it. And one thing I've noticed with a lot of businesses that come to me and speak and ask for advice, or just a lot of businesses that I just look because I'm a very observant person, is the fact that they don't have a long term goal. They just get up and say, you know what, next 1 month I need to be projected 10K in revenue. Next 6 months and the end of this year I need to be making seven figures. And I believe another thing when it comes to social media, everybody's seeing people that are 10 steps ahead, but no one's seeing the people that are one step ahead, 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead. People like that are needed in the media because it's so hard to find, authenticity. Anything can be facaded. I can get up right now, go and rent a Mercedes outside and tell everybody that I've made it. I've got seven
Oh
figures.
yeah.
That's how social media is. It's all about, who is it that said that? Damson Idris about, building things brick by brick. Not meant to be a reference, guys, but quite literally, you have to build your career brick by brick, build your business brick by brick, because you're not going to build a house in 1 day. Let's be real. If a builder were to, build a house in just a day, they're not going to like that. You're not going to live in that house. You're going to think it's not sturdy, it's not safe, it's not suitable. However, if it were, a house that was built in a month or maybe a couple months, you'd be like, okay, I trust this sport. Same thing with your business. If you just get up one day, start a business, people can see that. And I feel as if young people and even just people in general don't realize that their audience and their market can see more than what they think they can see. And that is, the internal parts of your business, the external parts, each and every part. People forget that everybody can see it as much, and people can see the little fine-tuned details that you forgot to miss out. For example, you didn't buy a domain for your website because you thought, what is about the money. You didn't trademark it. You didn't put, correct pricing. Taxes are terrible. Nobody has long-term goals anymore. It's all about, let me get a car so I can be flashy on social, and then that's it. And then when the money's run out, what happens next?
Man, tell me about it. Well, I do have some questions from the students, and these are all really good. I like this first one. This is Raheem Cole. Hold on, the bell's getting me. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, what belief or habit did you have to unlearn to most achieve success? Okay. This is Raheem Cole. Sorry for the technical difficulty. He is in ninth grade, and he asked, what belief or habit did you have to unlearn to most achieve success?
No worries.
All right, we had a little technical difficulty. It's when we got connections across the Atlantic Ocean. It could happen sometimes, but we just had the question from Raheem Cole. What belief or habit did you have to unlearn to most achieve your success?
One habit I had to unlearn was having a timid or sad, or not even sad, just I want to call it a broke mentality. My mentality was, oh, like, but what if they think of me in this way? Or I'm scared that they're going to perceive me this way. At the end of the day, we came into this life alone. We're going to die alone. It doesn't matter. You know, it's all about what you're coming to do, what your aim is. And also just stop thinking about what other people are going to think about it as well, and my peers as well. Because what matters the most is what you're trying to do, what your mission is. And I'm the only person that knows what your mission is. So block out all the noise that you're hearing from the outside because you're the only person that knows what your mission is thoroughly. And it doesn't matter whether someone else is intending on executing it. It's about how you do it, how you execute it, how you do it is the most important thing.
Man, love it. This is Avery Harris. She's in 10th grade, one of our volleyball players and one of our archery participants here at Velma Jackson. And she asked, how did, ooh,
But one
all right,
thing I think is so important is to acknowledge the fact that stop listening to the voices around you and voices that are outside, because when that happens, it starts to plant seeds of doubt. And when you are someone with a mission and you know what mission you're meant to do, nothing else should matter. Nothing else should get in your head because you're the one that's gonna, you know the execution. No one else knows the execution. So no matter what words they say, it doesn't matter. You're gonna die alone, unfortunately. You came into this life alone. You didn't come holding hands with someone saying, you can do this, you know what I mean? You have to make sure your conscience is your best friend. That you are your number one supporter, your number one believer. If you don't believe in yourself and if you don't have confidence in yourself, everybody else can see it and no one will have faith in you. And even if someone were to have faith or confidence in you, it wouldn't work because you don't even trust yourself. And everything is up here. Everything and all the important things are all up here, you know? It's so important to train your mind to understand that. I wouldn't say it's a
wow,
lone wolf mindset, but to train your mind to understand the fact that you know, a majority of things are psychological. Marketing is psychological. Speaking is psychological. Everything goes into your subconscious mind, including people's comments. Don't do things just because your friend said so or because you feel as if you get validated from certain actions. You won't. And you're not going to feel validated. In fact, you'll feel very much empty right after. So 100% is to just train your mind and make sure, you're doing it for you and you tune out any other external voices but yours.
love it. This is Avery Harris. She's in 10th grade, one of our volleyball players and one of our archery participants here at Velma Jackson. And she
That's
asked,
what you
how
do.
did you know it was the right time to go into full-time entrepreneurship?
Hmm. I knew it was the right time when I stopped trying to delay myself. Because most people, when it comes to starting something, they're like, oh, but I don't feel like it's the right time. I don't feel like it's the right time. If that's the case, then when will it ever be the right time? Excuse me, when will it ever be the right time? If you keep telling yourself, I don't know, or you're unsure of yourself, should you really be in the business? Because when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's all about taking risks. Especially, traders, they take risks every day. Business, you're gonna take risks every day. And if you can't take the risk of starting your business and, just starting it in a time frame that you're content, don't bother. And I'm not saying if you have an idea, execute it immediately. If you have an idea, work on that idea and make sure that you have a plan scheduled out. Long-term goals, short-term goals. In fact, I recommend having a notebook and on each page of this notebook, put your goals. So one page, let's say I aim to make $1,000 this month. Next page will say I aim to connect with, I don't know, 10 startup founders. The next page, etc., so on and so forth. So then every time you get a step to that stage or you make a step towards that goal, sorry, you write it underneath that goal and be like, okay, so today I met up with X, Y, and Z and it went really well. And then, each step and steps, and by the time you've met that goal, you can look back and see, okay, cool. What did I do wrong? How could I have accelerated this? How can I make it better? Just make sure you've got a thorough plan, but don't keep delaying yourself for the sake of delaying yourself when you've got that whole thing planned out. Make sure that you've got a hard head on and make sure that you're not someone that gives up after the first minor inconvenience. Because
Oh
most
man,
people who
tell
start
me about it.
businesses, exactly, most people that start businesses, they literally, be like, they've rage quit essentially after one failure. And it's okay. Most entrepreneurs out there have had 5 failure businesses on average. And that's completely okay. I started my businesses when I was 9 years old. Businesses, shall I say. I started selling
Wow.
sweets. Then it was jewelry making. Then it was lip gloss. And then it was cosmetics. Always these small, small seeds. But each and every seed, is eventually it's going to sprout and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You start as a sapling and then you end up as a sunflower at the end of the day. So it's literally don't have a I call it a weakling mindset because you need to be very strong, to be an entrepreneur. You can't just get up and, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Love it. I got two more. This is Zayden Mann. He's in 9th grade. And this is a good question. He asked, well, you have four businesses. So do you attract customers to all four or do you have different target markets?
Oh, I like that question. A couple of them have similar markets, And one thing that I've started doing is I've made Investate like an Amazon. You see how Amazon has Amazon Music, Amazon Books, Amazon Kindle, music, films. That's what Investate's going to be. So we've got the Investate podcast, Investate Entrepreneurs, Investate University, what else? Investate Consulting, Investate Marketing Agency under different names. It all goes back to one business.
Wow.
So they have a very much shared thing. And because we work with a lot of corporate firms, they also go and look at our talent agency at times as well. And
Wow.
then it just kind of varies. A lot of our connections, because of how we've established ourselves, we've managed to have a lot of our connection through word of mouth. And that's one thing that I need to echo. Making sure that, you establish a firm foundation for your business is so important. If you start on the wrong foundation, that foundation is going to crumble and fall, and you're going to sit there and be like, why did it fail? Well, because you started on the wrong foundation. If you start on a foundation where you're doubting yourself, your whole business is going to be your doubt in just one building. Well, there's this one story about a man who built a house on sand and a man who built a house on rocks. The one on sand crumbled, the one on rock stood. Simple as. So it's honestly about laying that right foundation as well within all your businesses, making sure that once you have multiple, you're able to manage them all, but also, no, make sure, I don't, you know what, having two diverse businesses is also okay as long as you can handle that work.
Love it. I got one more, and I love this question. This is Kaylin Bullock. She's in ninth grade, and she asked, "What is the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself from running Investate?"
Ooh, biggest lesson I've learned about myself. Hmm, I think the biggest lesson I've learned about myself is that I needed to learn how to separate business Nana and outside of business Nana. Because I had a really bad issue of not separating those two lives. And there's a time last year I was in Greece and I was literally organizing an event whilst I was in my hotel room. And I was just like, oh gosh. That's when I had a realization, what is actually going through my mind? Yes, I may be young, I may have all of these skills, but it's also okay to take a break. That's another thing I've learned. It's okay to take a break. I'm just 18 years old. I haven't even reached the 20s yet. By the time I reach the 20s, perhaps I could start thinking I haven't done enough, but there's always going to be an imposter mindset. And I feel like I need to make sure I have more time for myself because everyone's like, enjoy your youth. I'm not the clubbing type. I'm the type, I like to go read, picnics, football sometimes, So just making sure I have more time for me and understanding myself more so that, I don't end up burning out. Because I burn out quite often. Obviously, neurodivergence, you don't even notice a burnout until you're like, so.
Big time. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. First of all, tell everybody where they can find you online, Investate, and you as well.
Of course. So on my Instagram, you can find me on NZNAIG or NZNAABENA, Nana Abena. On YouTube, you can find me as Nana Abena, NANAABENA. LinkedIn will be Nana Agyapong, Agyapong. And then search Investate on Google, LinkedIn, all social platforms, and you'll find us there as well.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get your IG out for everybody to follow you, putting some great content out. Looking forward to seeing the podcast. But the last thing before we go, here in the United States, we're celebrating Black History Month. I know in the UK you celebrate it in October. But as we continue to honor and remember so many great Black entrepreneurs and Black contributors to uh, American and British culture. Why is it so important for these kids to realize that their ideas are needed? We need more Black entrepreneurs in every industry. So, and you mentioned the
100%.
imposter syndrome. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean you can't do it. So, as they are
Exactly.
starting to make decisions to go to university or or not, why should they really consider taking a chance on themselves to be another great Black business owner?
Well, firstly, if you don't invest in you, no one else is going to invest in you. That's the truth. You've got teachers
Right.
like Greg that is willing to invest in you, but if you don't invest in yourself first, it's going to be hard for other people to invest in you. And this might sound a bit controversial, but don't take it as because I am black, I can't do certain things. Because no matter what skin color you are, everybody has skills, everybody has assets. And so much of our history has already been washed off away. So why not be a part of, the new generation to rewrite our history, to build something something, build a legacy. One quote that I made up, I need to get quoted for this. Building a legacy with my name as the foundation. All of you should honestly be building a legacy with your names as the foundation because you're building something and you're making sure that your name is the foundation of that business you're building, that legacy you're building, that career you're also building. It's so important to just understand that when it comes to starting yourself or investing in yourself, it's like you're making a difference to so many other people out there. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, the market is oversaturated, no, it's not. There's what, 9 billion humans on this earth? Surely there is about a couple thousand people that will be your customer, a couple thousand, 100,000, millions of people, that will be able to sustain or fill your bank accounts for you. If you go with the mindset, oh, it's oversaturated. If you are so strong in the mindset that it's oversaturated, how about how can I make myself different in the market instead? Not let me do follow the leader. How can I make myself different? How can I be a pillar in society that people have never thought of? Have a
Wow.
transformative mindset. Don't have a regressive mindset because if not, you're pushing yourself back. And there's already a lot of barriers, especially as a minority, especially as Black people. There's so many barriers that is honestly pushing back against us already. And so if you feed into that, you're only holding yourself in a chokehold. That's like, tying your neck to a pole and trying to run away. You're just going to kill yourself in the process. Change the narrative. Black History Month is about changing the narrative. We're rewriting history because, yeah, there's actually a poem by a man called John Agard called Checking Out My History. And instead of checking out our history, how about we are now rewriting history? Years that have been erased, you could be part of the history books or the curriculum that people learn in a couple years now. Don't let yourself down. And like I said, think about the future. Don't sit there and be like, oh, but it's not going to work out. You never know. Do you actually never know? If you plan it out well, it'll be fine. And think about the future because who do you want to be the next 5 years? Do you want somebody to know you? Do you want somebody to be impacted by you? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? And who are you building?
I love it. Well, again, we thank you so much for taking some time for us. My friend, Agyapong from all the way in London, United Kingdom, across the Atlantic. Thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's honestly so amazing to speak to you.
Awesome. We'll have to do this again. Talk to you soon, my friend.
100%. Have a nice one. Bye.
See ya.